Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name's Scyushi, and today we've got an interview from the Trove developers that was actually during April 3rd. I didn't know about this, a lot of people didn't know about this, but my buddy Vish ended up linking this in chat because they ended up discovering it on this Game Levate site. Suffice to say, there is some good news in here that is worth talking about and having a dedicated video about. I did kind of skim over this during yesterday's live stream. I do plan on streaming again today as well, but I thought it'd be interesting to end up going through this article with you guys and kind of like focusing on the entirety of the questions. So with that said, if you would kindly press your pinky toe against the like button, I would appreciate it. So anyways, they go on to say that for nearly a decade, Trove has captured the hearts of sandbox MMO, blah, 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 blah. Let's skip to the first question. How do you approach balancing new content while preserving the core elements that made the game popular in the first place? So they say, you're absolutely right. After 10 years, balancing is never-ending challenge. Our approach is built into 3 pillars: math, testing, and community feedback. We begin with calculations to ensure continuous game progress. However, pure calculation can sometimes be misleading, and some encounters might be too easy, while others may regenerate health too quickly, making them unbeatable. To refine this, we test new content internally and make necessary adjustments, rather than talking to us, the people that continually play this for hours on end. Anyways, that said, with 18 classes, countless updates, and mini games, community feedback is essential. Our public test server provides an early look at upcoming content, and we actively monitor our Discord channel where players share their thoughts, like everyone's hate towards the Luxian update. This collaboration helps us fine-tune gameplay before official releases, except in the case of the Luxian update, where they just released it despite our feedback. They did fix some stuff, arguably, but the update as a whole, I think, kind of came out as a flop. So luckily, Trove's core systems like Mastery and Power Rank allow for expansion while maintaining a familiar feel. No matter how wild new content gets, these mechanics ensure a sense of progression that remains intact. For Power Rank farmers and Mastery farmers, let's be real, it's not that big of a deal. Now, I'm not going to spend the entirety of this video being overly critical about all of these things that they're answering and talking about, because this is still, at the end of the day, something very positive to take away, that the developers are starting to be a bit more forthcoming and a bit more transparent. And this interview was actually, I think, posted earlier than their community letter, if I'm mistaken on the dates. Or if I'm not mistaken on the dates. And the community letter was a lot more transparent with us in stating where they were going in terms of what they were working on with the server transfer and VFX overhaul and stuff like that. How do you decide which player-generated content makes it into the game, and how does that influence the development process? We don't just take any player-created content and drop it into the game. Most contributions from the community contests where we set specific themes, like our 8th birthday event in 2023, where players designed birthday cakes, and we received everything from adorable allies and mounts to full-scale dungeons. Of course, we can't implement everything. We filter out submissions with technical issues or themes that don't fit. The remaining entries go through an internal voting process before we select the winners for inclusion. Beyond contests, our community creates mods that tweak visuals, UI elements, and gameplay. We love seeing their creativity and always look for ways to integrate high-quality player contributions into Trove's evolving universe. Except for things like the boss radar, which should just be staple hold in the game. Same with Chronicles DPS monitor. There's a lot of mods that quite literally make the game so much more playable and are implemented so well. I'm surprised that they're not actually being implemented into the game, other than possible performance issues. Now, something that they don't go over in this, that I just know from my years and years of playing Trove, I'm fairly confident that there is a limited amount of dungeons that can be in rotation at a time, which is why oftentimes you'll see a new dungeon get added to the game, and you might notice 1 or 2 dungeons that are removed from the rotation. It kind of sucks because it means that over the years we've seen a lot of contributions either get added or removed. In most cases, we still have some of the early bird first dungeons in the game, which are nostalgic, and I love that. But my God, that is the reason why the dungeon variety still remains almost untouched, despite the years and almost a decade of people adding content to the game and dungeons getting approved into the game. What's the overarching design philosophy behind Trove's mechanics and world building? What world building? At the core, Trove is built on 3 principles: silly fun, mechanical novelty, and accessibility. The game's wacky, contradictory world is part of its charm, except I haven't really seen the devs kind of adopt that as much as the player community. Mechanically, we introduced both small and large changes, from new pet effects to entirely new systems or classes. This is the closest we ever get to them referencing new classes being added. Accessibility doesn't necessarily mean new players can engage with every update immediately. Rather, we ensure that new features build on existing mechanics instead of breaking them. Yes and no. I would describe the majority of Trove's updates to be parasitic in design, which is an actual term for game designers called parasitic design, wherein there is the core gameplay loop, and there are a few subsystems that they've added to the game that play into that core gameplay loop. But then almost every update with Trove without fail ends up being parasitic, where it is a secondary core gameplay loop that is its own enclosed entity that doesn't affect anything to do with the core gameplay game loop, other than, oh, you get more power rank, oh, you get more mastery. That's about it. Like the Luxian update, for example, is its own secluded entity and part of the game. If you grind the Luxian update, the Trials of Luxian, that's not currently on consoles yet, and you progress through it, you max out everything in it, that's not going to affect any other aspect of the game other than just like mastery, for example, which doesn't really matter that much. But moving on, they say, for example, the Punches and Potions update introduced 2 new trade skills, which at the very least does go towards our mastery. While more complex than the previous ones, they still followed the same core crafting principles, keeping them familiar yet fresh. Except my argument is that once again, it was parasitic, because other than it just adding the profession XP that we could get, there wasn't really anything that we got out of it that was worthwhile. Maybe like 1 or 2 food items, but not something that overall impacted the game. You know what I mean? Up next, they got, how important is community feedback in shaping Trove's direction? Can you share an example where player suggestions led to significant change? Community feedback is everything, but we know some players might wonder, why haven't you implemented this yet? A great example is progression pacing. Players often tell us progression takes too long. While we acknowledge this, we also believe that struggle and discovery make the game meaningful. If players could instantly unlock everything, they'd miss the excitement of finding rare items, overcoming tough bosses, and exploring new biomes with friends. That's what makes Trove special. No, it isn't. This is completely false, because the irony is that the developers seem to be on a witch hunt almost to take all of those aspects out of the game. They're actually like exploring biomes with friends? What are you talking about? You made almost everything in the game untradeable, thus taking away the very reason to have this be an online game with other people in the first place. Anyways, they say, that said, we do listen, and our recent tutorial overhaul was based on feedback that introduction wasn't engaging enough. The new version is more interactive and represents Trove's unique charm from the very beginning, but it's still a terrible tutorial that overlooks many gameplay mechanics that the game doesn't explain to the player. In which case, you know what? Thank you, because it means my videos have more value. What steps are being taken to ensure that Trove remains accessible and fun for new players? So one major step was redesigning our tutorial to make it feel more like a Trove adventure rather than a checklist. I do like the new Trove tutorial. I think that it makes sense because it retcons the Daughter of the Moon lore and all of that crap. But generally speaking, it's kind of just the same tutorial as the original one that I played when I first started playing Trove. In fact, if they just brought that back, I liked that tutorial better. Anyways, beyond that, we're focusing on more horizontal content, features that all players, new and old, can enjoy equally. That is the one benefit I will say in their defense of parasitic game design, is that the Luxian update is something that most players can engage with without having to get to the end game. So anyways, they say that, for example, we're working on new game modes and classes that aren't locked behind long grind walls. So they are working on new classes. Please God, talk about them soon. We're also looking into improvements for the hub, which has grown crowded over the years. Players struggle to navigate it, and we want to make it more intuitive while preserving its charm. I personally think that they should start commissioning some players, because nothing against the developers, but the players are better builders than the developers. I'm not saying for myself. I have no desire to build anything in this game anymore because I've built way too much. But I still think that if they just grab some players, threw them a couple credits or something like that, like a contest for design the hub and make it more like a traditional MMO hub, like that would just be so freaking cool. But I appreciate the fact that they're talking about new game modes. I could care less about what that entails unless it's something exciting that isn't Bomber Royale, but new classes, plural. Please, devs, tell me about that. What do you look for in a partnership when working on crossovers and collaborations? God damn, I wish Trove had some crossovers and collaborations. Trove's versatility makes collaboration fun. Since our world spans genres like fantasy, sci-fi, and pirates, we can adapt many themes while keeping things lighthearted. Our main concern are age appropriateness and making sure the crossovers feel playful rather than forced. If we can integrate a partner's theme in a way that's fun and natural, we know we're on the right track. Please, God, give us some collaborations. Please. Like, not just people ripping off, like, Mario's hat and then it getting added to the game without Nintendo getting any money. Like, I want a Mario-themed costume that's, like, Switch exclusive or something, and then I could tie it to my account and still get it on PC. I genuinely don't know what they mean by crossovers and collaborations because I have yet to see a single one in Trove that has been impactful. The only one that I can even recollect would be the one way back in the day with Trine Worlds and, oh god, what was that? The Heckbug event, which originally they called the Hellbug event. I kept calling it the Heckbug event because I believed that the game needed to be family friendly, and eventually they ended up changing it to the Heckbug event, so yay, that was cool. But that Heckbug event was actually part of another game that Trine Worlds owned. I don't remember the name, and the game is already dead, so it doesn't matter. Kind of got a bit of a repeat question here from something we answered earlier, which is how do you manage content pacing to keep players excited without overwhelming them? So live service games move fast, and Trove is no exception. No, it's very slow. We have a massive backlog of ideas, but we balance that with the realities of development. Our team didn't originally build Trove, we took over after its launch, so maintaining older systems can be tricky. The spaghetti code, in this regard, I feel for the devs. Genuinely. We've actively been streamlining outdated mechanics to free up time for new content creation and ensuring updates remain exciting without overloading players. We haven't really seen that take place yet, but again, in the developer's defense for how slow the content has been, I think that a lot of it has to do with the spaghetti code of this game and them redesigning a lot of those old mechanics while not necessarily being forthcoming about redesigning those mechanics because it's boring. You know, that's not really something that players would be excited to hear about. Like when they talk about server migration or overhauling a bunch of like thousands of VFX in the game to increase frame rate. Well, I mean, honestly, you'd think that the average player wouldn't care, but genuinely speaking, most of us do care. And that's where I'm glad that they've been more transparent with that stuff. So lastly, what's the long-term vision for Trove? Are there any big features or gameplay changes you're particularly excited about? Our goal is to keep Trove fresh with new content and mechanics while refining core systems like Mastery and Power Rank. Yeah, okay. Right now we're focusing on improving older systems so they require less maintenance. That genuinely is like the best thing that they could do. This frees us up to create bigger, better updates. In regards to this, something that I've talked about extensively during my live streams and over the years, I think that they need to also kind of streamline how various items and content gets added into the game. Like take Chaos Chest items, for example. I think that they should have utilized the voting system that Fluxion has for players to vote on items that should get into the game. And then it would at least be something that would, I don't know, generate enough interest that the developers could look at it and then they could be like, okay, this should get added to the game or not, just to make it that much faster and easier a process for them so that they don't have to spend as much time working on it. Similar to years and years ago, there was this game called Spore, which ended up having like this community hub where people could create all sorts of things and then players would vote on those things and you could actually just sort through them like based on the likes and stuff. I think that would be an overly complex mechanic system that they would have to take a lot of extra time to develop for Trove, but if it was something that they ended up implementing for dragons, chaos chest items, and maybe even dungeons, it means that it would take out the busy work that the developers themselves need to currently do. Anyways, they say they're also exploring new gameplay modes and challenging content that push player engagement and innovation. Expect fresh mechanics, creative challenges, and more ways for the community to shape the world of Trove. We'll see it I'll believe it when I see it. And then oddly enough, this is like the only comment here, but I did think that this was worth talking about. I don't know why it's white on white, but anyways, Sir_Beard_ says, Trove is a fantastic game that could be one of the greatest MMOs of all time. Devs need to make sure they don't weigh the monetization in their calculations quite so heavily though. I love the grind, but having something as important as Star Chart be as expensive as it is, whereas the only option for free-to-play is to heavily farm time-gated resources over the course of months, if you don't miss any days, is more than a little off-putting. I do very much enjoy the game. 2.5k hours on PlayStation, maybe 100 more on PC and Switch. It also is insanely good to hear about new classes being worked on. Hopefully that's something that is coming quickly after the Luxian trials that literally no one asked for, but seems kind of okay. An update roadmap would be a massive help for your more dedicated player base to keep sticking it out between massive gaps between updates and fight the burnout. I couldn't have put it better myself. But what do you guys think about all of that? I hope that you ended up enjoying today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all of that stuff. Frankly speaking, the biggest thing that I could take away from this is the fact that they're working on new classes. I hope that we see them soon. Apparently they are talking about them being easier to obtain than Solarian or Bard, for example. But once again, I'll believe it when I see it because their words don't match their execution.